Greetings, class. I hope this is recording. This is my introduction to Organizational Leadership 6200 Leadership and Ethics. This is on a live chat mode. We'll see if I can save this. Anyways, greetings from Pittsburgh, PA, to all of you in this class. I look forward to working with you over the next 8 weeks. And I thought it'd be nice for me to give you some kind of heads up on how this course is going to run. By now, you should have been able to look at the syllabus. If you go to the Start Here button, you'll see a picture of me and you'll see a course introduction as well as a syllabus. And I recommend highly that you read through the syllabus carefully, because that provides you with a sense of where we're going with this course. I'm not going to go over that with you here, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the structure of the course. If you go to the weekly modules, you'll see that we've got an opening week this week where I introduce you to organizational and leadership ethics, talk about the good life, and that really is what ethics is all about. It's about how we live and what we value, so that the course will focus on those sorts of things. But then we also have the leadership dimension. And the aim of this course is to give you some ways to think about ethical frameworks that you might possibly be able to implement in the workplace. And that means that we've got to think about the workplace today as highly diverse in terms of world and life view, in terms of gender issues, race issues, sexual orientation issues, and so on and so forth. So that means that that after we do a discussion about the good life, I have you do your credo and story. And this is important for this course because we all have different sets of beliefs, and we all have different stories that we participate in, and we need to share those beliefs sometimes. We need to share those stories perhaps less often. We don't think of our lives in terms of a narrative, but in fact it is an unfolding narrative that's wide open, if only we have the vision to see that. So this exercise, the credo and story exercise, I've done for years with some success. And it's successful because then I'm able to launch the course and say, so we have a variety of worldviews. Some of us believe in God, some of us don't. Some of us are atheists, some of us are agnostics. And in the end, even though it's extremely important to each of us, our worldviews, that is, in our class, we don't discuss those. We have to talk about them and then put them aside. And the meat of this course are 5 sort of perennial ethical systems that continue to be appealed to by people in academia and people in the workplace. So week by week, for the 2nd week through the 7th week, we're going to go through these different ethical systems. And I would, if I had a blackboard, I would have them all up on the blackboard for you. And I would have virtue ethics, which is where we start, because that's how Plato and Aristotle start out talking about ethics in the Western tradition. And then we move on to deontological ethics and utilitarian ethics. And these are 2 systems of thinking that were Enlightenment and post-Enlightenment thinkers, Immanuel Kant and John Stuart Mill, who came up with ways of thinking about a secular ethic that seemed to be appropriate for Enlightenment, that seemed to be appropriate for people who were, in essence, putting religion to the side and thinking about what it meant to be a secular, not a religious, nation state, and a secular people. And then from there, we move on to the ethical relativism of Ruth Benedict, who was an anthropologist and who basically argued that well, there really are no absolute ethical bottom lines. There are no absolute universal ethical principles. And she came up with this because she did field work in Samoa with Franz Boas and other anthropologists, and came to the conclusion that all cultures were relative. But then she felt that embedded in each culture were a set of values and norms that promulgated a particular ethic, but that ethic would be unique for that culture and not transferable to any other culture. And then finally, I think we end with Ayn Rand's moral egoism, which I still see very much alive today. And that ethical system basically argues that it's all about me, and it's only about me, and I don't have to worry about anybody else. And she wrote a number of novels and a number of essays. We're going to read a short version of her essay entitled The Virtue of Selfishness, where she argues again that my only concern ethically should be for myself. And if in the process of taking care of myself, other people benefit, then that's fine. But I have no duty or obligation to other people. So what's really interesting as we end with Ayn Rand, and here in the 21st century, postmodern, fractured, disease-ridden society we live in, Ayn Rand is parting with all of the previous ethical systems that we studied that say basically ethics has to be understood within the context of community. In other words, I have an obligation not only to myself, but to other people. So all this debate, for example, about the coronavirus and whether or not to wear a mask could be situated beautifully in this debate about moral egoism over and against some sort of altruism. Moral egoism says, I'll wear a mask if I want to it. The results be damned. But the altruist and all four of the previous secular ethical systems talk about altruism as being important, that is caring for the other, and as well as caring for myself. The person who dons the mask recognizes that the chance of projecting the coronavirus is reduced by 75% if I'm around other people, if I'm wearing a mask. So these ethical theories and the practices that are inferred from them are actually quite important and very much alive today, especially during this time of the pandemic. So that's the way the course is laid out. At the heart are these five ethical systems, and we'll talk more about them as we move on. There are two textbooks for the course, The Quest for Moral Leaders, and we'll read most of the essays in this book, and they're really excellent. The book is about 15 years old, but again, the issues that are raised in terms of our ethical responsibility, especially in the workplace, are raised by people who've been writing about ethics for a long time. And Joanne Ciola, Terry Price, and Susan Murphy, who edit this anthology of essays written by a variety of scholars who have a background in ethics but are also qualified in the area of leadership, that will raise a lot of important questions which will probably remain unanswered during this course. But the most important thing in ethics and philosophy is not to nail down a specific answer, but to ask the right questions. And hopefully we're going to be doing that in this class. Then the other book which students really enjoy is Tom Morris's If Aristotle Ran General Motors. And this is much more accessible, highly readable, and highly insightful about what it would be like if our major corporations actually paid attention to certain ethical principles that we have dating back to Plato and Aristotle. So it's a perfect book for this course, and every week, at least weeks 1 1 through 7 will have readings from these two textbooks. And as I said, I'm not going to go through the syllabus, but you have that before you. Please go to the Start Here button and download the syllabus and read it if you have not done so already. I hope you have copies of the textbook. Those are critical. This course doesn't make much sense if you're not reading the sections of the textbooks assigned for each week and participating in discussions about them. The final thing is the term project, and that is an ethnography of a recurrent meeting. And the assignment for that is in the syllabus, and I want you to review that as well, because it's going to be different now that we're doing a lot of synchronous distance communication. But I've had students do e-meetings, electronic meetings, synchronous meetings at the workplace and do an ethical analysis of that. What I'm really looking for here is not for you to be a whistleblower at your corporation, not for you to find some terrible law that your corporation is breaking, or some breach of ethics that's so heinous you just have to report it. I don't want you to do that at all. I want you to observe the ethical frame out of which the person leading the meeting seems to be using. In other words, is this person sort of doing Kant's deontology, where when I decide to do something, I ask if I want the whole world to do this? Is he working out of a John Mills utilitarian framework, which basically asks, am I doing the greatest good for the greatest number? Or is this person kind of a virtue ethics person that really, my life is to be an example to other lives, and I have developed habits that eventuate into a virtue, a character that has these characteristics of altruism, magnanimity, and so on and so forth? Or is the person leading it a good candidate for the moral relativism of Ruth Benedict or the moral egoism of Ayn Rand? Turn this into a fun project. Make sure that you talk with your supervisor about doing this and get permission to do it. But it should be insightful. Students usually get a lot out of this. There is a template for the ethnography of a current and recurrent work meeting in the syllabus. So run over that, because I want you to adhere pretty strictly to that template. It'll give you a structure within which to do this study. It'll help facilitate it, because all I'm asking for is a background to the meeting and the history of the meeting in the organization where it takes place, and then a description of the physical environment of the meeting, which is really important. The way we lay rooms out, the way we situate tables and chairs tells us something about the power dynamics present, and also the ethical values and norms associated with the group. And then finally, you'll do a blow-by-blow description of the actual meeting with the participants, and then you'll do a final ethical analysis and talk about what ethical systems you think are in play here, or what ethical system seems to dominate from the perspective of the person leading this meeting. And again, what I'm really looking for is your ability to integrate the course materials that we're reading into this final project. But I want to get you thinking about that right here at the beginning of the semester. And I believe I still have 2 sample student ethnographies. Yes, I do, in the first week of the course. So you'll want to review those, because these are excellent examples of what I'm looking for in this assignment. And also, I'll just broach the subject. I know this is a fully online class, and we probably all have varying schedules, but I'm certainly open to meeting a couple of times throughout the semester for a live session with the whole class in Google Hangouts, because I've become acclimated to that since we had to move all of our courses synchronic and asynchronic online during the last spring semester. So again, welcome to the course. I look forward to meeting with all of you, and we'll see if this actually recorded.